Everybody's happy? Yep. Okay, so members, we have a quorum. We have 5 members, including myself, at least. So we've a lot to get through today, so I'm asking for people's forbearance as we try and get through it all. Just to give everyone a sort of brief overview of what we're going to discuss at today's meeting. We have the draft standing order and associated legal advice requested by the committee to provide for a final deadline for introduction of a private member's bill to the Assembly. We'll be discussing the legal advice that was requested by the committee on 2 issues relating to the provision in standing orders for an annual debate on the Executive's legislative timetable and further consideration of proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, including a briefing by the Clerk Assistant and the draft standing order and associated legal advice. So we are in public session now, yes, thank you. So the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. Members are welcome, as always, to use their mobile device as long as they are in airplane mode and all devices are muted, and it's not permitted to take photographs or record any of this meeting. If members have any interest to declare in relation to today's meeting, please do so now. Not seeing anything, thank you. Okay, so agenda item 1 is apologies. We have a stand-in apology from our chairperson, Kelly Armstrong. I'm not aware of any other apologies. I think Robbie might be joining us a little bit later. And we have Danny Donnelly, William Irwin, Orlia Flynn and Cara Hunter online at present. So members, just given that Kelly is probably not going to be able to join us for the remainder of this term, well, to the end of recess, sorry, I think it would be nice if we just sent her a wee note just on behalf of the committee just to say, look, we wish her well and hopefully we see her back in the autumn and back at the helm. So if members are in agreement, can we send her just a little note from the committee just to wish her well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, agenda item 2 is draft minutes. So you'll find the draft minutes of our meeting on the 29th of May at pages 5 to 10 of the meeting pack. Can I get agreement from members that the minutes are a true reflection of our last meeting? Thank you. I'll just sign.
Yeah.
Can you sign? Yeah.
It's Trevor Clark and now.
Thank you. And we now have Trevor Clark joining us as well. Good to see you, Trevor. Okay, so agenda item 3 is matters arising. So item 1, we have ongoing issues relating to broadcasting. So obviously we had the attendance at the previous meeting with the acting Assembly Head of Communications, Michael Kearns, and he's provided further clarification regarding the reasons for the conversation of committee members in the Zoom waiting room being broadcast live rather than the sound from the committee meeting itself, and you'll find that further clarification at pages 12 to 14 of the meeting pack. Can I ask members just to note the additional information and agree that was agreed at the meeting on the 29th of May. The situation will be monitored over future meetings and further clarification sought from this committee if those problems still persist. During his briefing, Michael had offered the committee a tour of the Assembly's broadcasting facilities to demonstrate how the broadcasting of meetings and remote participation by members is managed. That tour will take place immediately after this meeting, and any member who has indicated that they wish to take part is obviously welcome to do that, and anybody that hasn't done so yet, as I say, it's immediately after this meeting, so just make yourself known to the committee staff or indicate now if you wish. Agenda item 4 is provision of a final deadline for the introduction of members' bills to the Assembly, and we're now going to get some legal advice and a draft standing order. So members will remember that on the meeting of the 1st of May, the committee discussed and agreed that a draft standing order and associated legal advice to provide for a final deadline for a private member's bill be introduced to the Assembly on the last sitting day of June of the penultimate session of a mandate, and it should be prepared for consideration. That legal advice and draft standing order can be found at pages 19 to 24 of the meeting pack, and we're delighted to have the Assembly Legal Advisor, Alice McKelvey, attend the committee today to take us over that legal advice and to answer any questions that members may have. So can I get agreement as per the norm with legal advice that we move into closed session?
Opposed?
Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
So, just want to declare the meeting back into public session. So members, we're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is provision for proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, and we're going to get a briefing from Assembly officials. At our previous meeting, the committee has agreed the principles that it wanted included in the new standing order to provide for proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, and has been considering its approach to the practical and administrative issues that it may include in the committee report that would accompany the draft standing order. At the meeting today, we will consider the responses received from the Speaker, the parties and the independent members on proxy voting. We'll consider the raised paper on the registration of foster carers and confirm the definition of fostering. We'll receive legal advice on whether there are any situations or votes where a proxy vote may not be legally competent, such as cross-community voting, given the reference in the Good Friday Agreement to members present and voting. We will undertake our first consideration of a draft standing order outlining the principles of proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, and we'll complete and confirm the committee's position on the issues to be included in the guidance, including the deadline for notification to the Speaker. So, just to advise members that are joining us online, we have Paul Gill, Clerk Assistant, with us today, and Paul is going to outline the rationale for example, the 9:30 a.m. deadline for notification to the Speaker used for proxy voting during the COVID pandemic. And Paul's also here to answer any questions that we have that members may have based on the Speaker's letter on proxy voting. And you'll find the Speaker's letter at pages 122 to 124 of the meeting pack. So following this briefing, Jonathan McMillan, Head of Assembly Legal Services, will attend to outline the legal advice requested by the committee and to discuss the first draft of the new standing order. So, with all that said, welcome Paul back to our meeting, and invite Paul, just as I said, I know you're going to speak specifically to the rationale around the 9:30 deadline that the Speaker had alluded to, so over to you and any other issues that you might feel it's relevant as well.
Thank you very much, Chair and members, for the opportunity to attend today. As you say, the Speaker has responded on the issue of proxy voting, and I'm happy to summarise the issues in that response, including the rationale for the previous deadline during the pandemic. From the Speaker's perspective, when considering proxy voting arrangements, it's necessary to consider the issue not just from the perspective of what would work best for members, albeit that's obviously very important, but also from the perspective of what arrangements best serve the Assembly as a democratic institution and the integrity of its procedures. And I know for you, obviously, as the Committee on Procedures, that's also a position that you would want to take. The Speaker has made some broader points about the importance of voting at the Assembly, and that provides the context in which he's responded to you on the specific questions of proxy voting, which the Speaker supports in limited circumstances such as parental leave and long-term sick absence. The Speaker makes the point that the basic premise underpinning how the Assembly carries out its business is that when members take decisions, they do so following a debate during which there has been an opportunity for effective scrutiny, and members have had the opportunity to hear in person all arguments for and against a proposal. And as the Speaker notes, this is a really privileged role, and members and ministers are therefore expected to give priority to Assembly business and be present in Parliament buildings over any other matter. Members are then personally responsible for how they exercise their vote and are accountable to their constituents for whatever decision they take. And this approach is important because it ensures that individual members are appropriately informed before taking decisions, and that should support effective scrutiny and good lawmaking. And I think this is a very key point for the Speaker, who has, in his time in office, emphasised the importance of the Assembly strengthening its scrutiny arrangements. The flip side of that, of course, is that if members were able to be routinely absent from Parliament buildings, including for voting, then this could risk undermining the credibility of the Assembly and its decision-making processes. And there is a tension between effective decision-making and good scrutiny, and members being able to vote on matters where they've not been informed about the relevant issues. The Speaker says that it therefore follows from this position that any departure from this principle should only be in the most exceptional circumstances where there is clear justification. And the Speaker recognises that COVID was such an exceptional circumstance. So you'll recall during that period that social distancing actually prevented members from gathering in the chamber or passing through the lobbies in their usual large numbers. Where necessary, members were required to self-isolate, even if that meant leaving Parliament buildings while business was taking place. In addition, once the necessary arrangements were in place, members were laterally able to participate in plenary proceedings remotely without actually being in the building. The specific arrangements developed for proxy voting and managing other business during the pandemic were therefore prepared in the context of the Assembly needing to be able to continue to carry out its business while recognising that at any given time, large number of members might be unavailable. However, these arrangements were specific to those particular circumstances. They reflected the significance of the real risk that the Assembly may not be able to take decisions and were proportionate to that. And that's where the 9:30 deadline came from last time. The practice was that a party whip would vote on behalf of most, if not all, members of their party. And a 9:30 a.m. deadline meant that if on the morning of a sitting the party whip woke up feeling unwell and tested positive for COVID, they would be able to provide for another member of the party to exercise the proxy votes. And without that safeguard in place during the pandemic, there was a real risk that an entire party may have been left unable to vote. The Speaker's point is that we shouldn't now necessarily rely on the pandemic approach for proxy voting, but instead that new arrangements should be determined by the specific needs of those situations. And obviously, we're not now talking about situations where whips would be voting on behalf of all members of their party, only those that would benefit from the particular arrangements that you're looking at here in respect of parental leave, etc. The Speaker has therefore made a number of recommendations about how proxy voting might work in practice in the more limited circumstances, and they're set out in the annex to his letter. If I may, Chair, I'll just say a few words about the context for those recommendations. A vote in the Assembly is a really important and significant thing. The Speaker has referred to the privilege that attaches to the role of a member in being able to vote. A single vote could be the difference in whatever decision the Assembly takes. And these could be matters of huge significance for society, for our economy, for our criminal law, or even for our political stability. A vote is a way in which the Assembly decides, and its decisions affect all citizens. So this is essentially the basis of how our democracy operates. The stakes are therefore very high. The Assembly needs to have an approach to taking decisions in which everyone has confidence. And that means when it comes to divisions, we need to make sure that every vote is properly exercised, is properly counted, and is properly recorded. And we need this procedure really to be unimpeachable. Everybody, all members, but the public at large as well, needs to accept that when a clerk stands up in the chamber and reads out the result of a division, that is the definitive and authoritative result. There can't be any doubt about that, and that's why we have this very formal process where we appoint tellers who then have to oversee the conduct of a vote on behalf of the Assembly. And that obviously applies to proxy voting as well. Everyone needs to have confidence that when a member walks into a lobby and says, I'm also voting on behalf of another member, that they are legitimately authorised to do this. So that's why we have criteria that apply. That's why we have to undertake checks. That's why we take so much time to communicate to everybody concerned where proxy voting arrangements are in place. And that's why we need a deadline in advance of the sitting where proxy votes are due to occur. Without a deadline, there wouldn't be the opportunity for the Speaker to receive in good time the notification, for the staff in the business office then operating under the Speaker's authority to carry out the necessary checks and updates, which, as the Speaker's letter notes, all need to be recorded properly for audit purposes, so everyone can be assured with a high degree of confidence that the processes have been followed properly. So, Chair, I hope that's helpful in setting out the Speaker's position in all of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or members may have.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That's been useful, and I don't think our approach differs massively from the Speaker. There's probably some, throughout the committee's deliberations, there's probably some differences, and you've outlined some of them there. For example, I know the Speaker has been very clear in terms of the number of proxies one person should carry, and I think it was through the committee's deliberations we had said maybe that's, we would want them to carry as many as possible, but perhaps we were thinking back to the COVID days when it was necessary for that, just due to social distancing and for health and safety reasons. So I think maybe the recommendation was that, and we'll hear the legal advice will probably strain into that's coming after this item as well. But I think in the legal advice it states that it should be 2, that the proxy shouldn't carry any more than 2. In your opinion, is that where we should be landing, or I don't think anybody wants to. We're not in COVID times. I don't think it's wise for one person to carry the whole party, for example. But is two maybe seems, and members will have their opinion, is 2 maybe too restrictive? So how did we land on the 2, or what's the thinking behind that?
Well, I know you'll get into the discussion on the draft standing order once we moved into closed session. For now, just to say that the Speaker hasn't taken a definitive position on that. He hasn't either recommended or directed that the committee should take a particular approach in the standing order, but has really just addressed the broader principle that if a single member was able to exercise proxy votes on behalf of a large number of members and then that single member was unavailable, that's a greater risk. So that's really the point that the Speaker's making there. Whether or not you want to provide for that in the standing order, I suppose, is a policy decision for the committee to consider. And even if you didn't provide for it, I suppose it doesn't mean that in practice, just because that exclusion or a limit wasn't in the standing order didn't mean that members couldn't choose to pick different members other than the whip anyway to exercise their proxy votes. So I think the main thing is just to be aware that if a single member is doing this and then that single member is unavailable for whatever reason, that's a greater risk to a larger number of members.
And I suppose, obviously the business office will have their own administrative issues to work through as well in terms of the timing, whether it's 9:30, I think was previously during COVID times, the deadline. And I think the recommendation from the Speaker is that it's 4:00 on the day before. And I suppose I always have to keep myself in check that we're talking about parental leave here, so we're not, these things shouldn't come as a surprise, but if I'm due a baby and I think my maternity is going to start on a certain date, but obviously things can happen and I may have to go off earlier than what was expected, or likewise people on paternity leave as well. I think maybe that provision, just that flexibility, that things can happen, unforeseen, and that it won't always be, but I think in some circumstances you could be in a territory where it could be last minute. So I think my personal opinion would be giving it that that as close as we can to business starting on the day, that 9:30 deadline. From a business office perspective, I know they've managed it fairly well during COVID, but is that something, in your opinion, you think could be manageable? Given that it won't be the norm. If we're talking about parental leave here, generally people know when they're going off and it's not an issue.
Yeah. Well, the Speaker has recommended a deadline of 4 p.m. on the previous working day. And the reason for that, I suppose, comes back to the point that I made at the outset here. In looking at this, the Speaker doesn't just have to consider what would work best for members, albeit that is obviously very important to him, but there's also just ensuring the integrity of the arrangements as well and what works best for the Assembly as an institution. There needs to be a deadline in advance of this for the business office staff to carry out all the necessary checks, but then also to communicate it to everybody who's going to be involved in the votes, whether that's going to be the Speaker at the table clerks, the lobby clerks, those who are going to be appointed as tellers, because all of those people are stakeholders in the voting process and they all need to know that somebody's legitimately authorised to exercise a proxy vote. If the deadline is 9:30, and yes, we had that during COVID for those specific reasons because of the risk that an entire party or two parties may not be, all the members not be able to vote. The risk is then that a sitting starts at 10:30, and that only leaves an hour for all of those checks to be undertaken, all of that communication to be carried out. And I think the Speaker feels that it's prudent, given the importance of making sure that this process is unimpeachable and everyone has confidence in it, that only leaving an hour before the sitting starts introduces an unnecessary element of risk. That risk was necessary during COVID because, as I say, you could have had 50 or 60 members not being able to vote. But in these circumstances, I don't think the Speaker's view is that that's proportionate. And I suppose, as you recognise, you would hope that there'd be very few circumstances anyway where it's on the morning of a vote, and that's only when somebody who's due to use their parental leave is having to put this in. The other point, I suppose, just to make about this hour between 9:30 and the plenary starting at 10:30 is that actually is one of the most pressurised points during the week for the Business Office. That's when they are meeting the Speaker and Deputy Speakers to provide the briefing for what's going on in plenary that day. And it's also the time which the deadline for matters of the day coming in arrive, and then 10:30 is the deadline for any urgent orals. So it's already a very pressurised time during the week, that period between 9:30 and 10:30. So I think taking all of that into account, the Speaker thinks that the most prudent approach would be 4 p.m. on the previous working day.
I appreciate that, and that's thank you for clarifying. Just other members may not be aware just of how the Business Office actually operates on sitting days, and I appreciate that it is very high pressured on those plenary days. I know the Speaker, I think in other, and you can keep me right, in other legislators they don't. So there's a requirement for the person who's carrying the proxy to acknowledge that they're willing to do that. And I think that's something the Speaker has said he would like, in any new standing order included. So, and again, it'll be the will of the committee to decide whether that's something they want to specify as well, or whether it's just enough for that person to be nominated without having to acknowledge that they accept receipt of it.
I think the Speaker's point was that the member who's nominated should consent to it. The flip side of that is that if a member didn't consent to it, you shouldn't be able to force them to be able to vote on your behalf. So I think obviously they should have to consent to it, but I don't think it's the Speaker's intention to build in a separate step whereby, having receipt of that notification, the Business Office then would have to go to that member who'd been nominated and get that confirmation from them. I think the Speaker would be content that simply confirming in the email that that member had consented to doing this and copying them in it would be enough. So
essentially the onus is on the member nominating to have that communication with the person to say, I'm nominating you, are you willing to accept this? I'm going to nominate the business, or I'm going to notify the Speaker in the Business Office now that you're the person.
That's right, and that would be enough then, I think, to satisfy the Speaker that those arrangements had been in place, as opposed to something where a member hadn't even told the other member that they were going to nominate them, and that other member might say, well, I don't want to vote on your behalf. So the point is for that to have been resolved in advance of the arrangements coming to the Speaker. And
I know Danny's in. Sorry, Danny, I'm going to let you in now. But just in terms of so when we're talking about parental leave, it's long term. So somebody may have nominated their vote to me, but for some reason, a few weeks down the line, I'm sick. So how do I ensure that vote that I've been tasked with and mine then is, well, it's a different story if I don't have any, I'm off sick, but the person who's on parental leave and has nominated their vote to me. So how do I ensure then that is carried? Because I know the Speaker was very specific that you're the person that's nominated, and I know he's very precious about that. So how do we deal with that situation should it arise?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the points that the Speaker makes, there is scope for dealing with that, because he has said in that annex any change to proxy voting arrangements following the deadline, so if that's the 4 p.m. deadline, should only take effect from the next sitting day. So, a member who was off on maternity leave and said that they had nominated you to carry out their proxy votes for the next 2 months could then get in touch to say, I'd now like to change that arrangement with effect from tomorrow. It should be, member X instead that's going to do that, and they've consented to that.
It would have to be the person it couldn't be me as the proxy. I couldn't say I'm proxying for Malaysia, so and I'm now off, I'm passing it on to, it would have to be the person. Yes,
it would be the person who's off, because they're the one that's ultimately responsible for what needs to happen here. And I think, just going back to this point about everybody having confidence that when somebody goes in and says that they're authorised to vote on behalf of another member, that other member actually knows that the person in there is there with their approval, and not that it's been passed on to somebody that they didn't know about and weren't aware was the case.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Paul. Danny, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Paul. Just a few questions, if you don't mind, just so that I can get it kind of smoothed over in my head. Can we just go through the process? So if a member needs parental leave for whatever reason, they email the business office by 4 p.m. On the day before, including the proxy within the email, just as a CC'd. And then when the proxy is voting, then the next day, the proxy is voting, they go through the lobbies, they're talking to the clerk at the end of the lobby. So they then express that they're also carrying the vote for somebody else. How will that bit work?
So, yes, that's what would happen. The proxy would go through the lobby and say, I'm voting for myself, but I also want to vote for, whoever the case might be, Mr. Donnelly, and I'm authorised to do that. Because of the checks that the business office would have carried out and the communication that we would have had that carried out, actually the lobby clerks would be aware of that and that those arrangements were in place. And the whips would have been made aware of that, and obviously the whips are the ones that appoint the tellers. The lobby clerks will be able to tell the tellers in the lobby, here's who's authorised to do this, and the speaker and those who are at the table would all be aware of that as well. So that's why there is this administrative process that takes place after the nominations come in to make sure that everybody's aware of that, because I think maybe what you're getting at here is, like, how can we have confidence that these arrangements are actually legitimate? And that I think is really important to the speaker, and that's why we just want to take the time to make sure that where that happens, everybody has confidence that it is being done in line with what the Assembly has agreed should be the case.
Okay, thank you for that. And you're right, it is about having confidence in the security of a result of a vote. And then when the vote is recorded, the vote will be recorded as a proxy on the official result. Yep.
That's correct, yes. So, our view is, unless of course you as a committee take a different view, but the arrangements that we had in place during the last time, that we would replicate that then. So in the official report, it would show which members voted in person. It would show all members had voted, but it would differentiate between those who had voted in person and those that had voted by proxy. And the Assembly's official minutes of proceedings would reflect that as well. And in fact, where proxy voting arrangements were in place but no vote took place, the minutes of proceedings would also reflect that. So there would always be transparency around these arrangements.
Okay. When the result of a vote is announced and you have 60 members vote for, 30 members vote against, will there be a breakdown in the announcement of proxy votes, or?
No, there wouldn't be a breakdown at that stage. So the way the system works, when it records that a vote's taking place, it'll record just the name of the member who has voted. So it would be essentially after the event, when we're publishing in the official report and when we're publishing in the minutes proceeding, that we would have that rather than an announcement at the table. However, the tellers who'd been appointed to oversee the vote, they would be aware of the proxy votes that take place. So, and their role obviously is to ensure on behalf of both sides, those voting aye and those voting no, that everything had been properly followed. So that's the way in which during the course of the vote itself, there would be that assurance to the Assembly.
Okay, so after a vote, you'll have the list of who voted what way, and you'll have previously the list of who's carrying the proxies for each person. These will be put together to inform the official minute.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Just a couple of other quick questions, if the chair doesn't mind.
Go ahead.
You mentioned just for example, the situation where a labour was to start unexpectedly overnight. So obviously after the 4 p.m. deadline. Now, I appreciate these are going to be rare circumstances. In a situation like that, will that person then have to, they'll only be able to use their proxy the day after?
Yeah.
The next day, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So they'll have to inform by 4 p.m. that day, and it will only be the day after, so there'll be a day's sitting will effectively have been lost to them.
That's right. That day's absence would be essentially treated the same as any other absence from any other type of member who wasn't available to be there. But obviously from the working day beyond that, they would be able to have proxy voting arrangements in place.
Okay. And just in the very, very rare circumstances, obviously, and they will affect, most people will know, way in advance when their parental leave is going to start, but there will be rare circumstances where people will not. It will be unexpected, the date will not be known. And when a proxy, the other question is, when a proxy becomes sick, as the chair had talked about there, will it be up to the proxy to tell the person that they're proxying for that they're unable to proxy for them?
Once the absent member has put in place proxy voting arrangements, it's for that absent member to then change those arrangements if they want to do so. So if the person who was going to act as the proxy became sick, presumably then they'd need to let the absent member know, I'm not going to be available for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case might be, and then that absent member would simply send a further email to the business office to say, well, in that case, I'm going to nominate a different member to act on my behalf.
Okay. And so it would be up to the proxy to inform the person they're proxying for that they'll not be available. There would be no communication otherwise.
That's right, because this is a relationship, I suppose, between the absent member and the proxy. And if there's going to be some change to that and the understanding in which they've put in place that arrangement, then clearly the proxy needs to be communicating that back to the absent member.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. And I think we'll probably get to that in more detail later on in the pack as well when we're going through the provisions of the standing order. So we can come back to that if you like. Has any other member any other questions or clarifications that they need from Paul? No? Okay, I know Paul's staying with us for the legal advice that we're going to receive now. So I want to thank Paul for that, for the clarification in terms of the speaker's thoughts on this. So agenda item 7 is provision for proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, and this is legal advice. So we are delighted to welcome the Head of Legal Services, Jonathan McMillan, to discuss the legal advice and the draft standing order and answer any questions that we may have on that. As with normal procedure with legal advice, we will go into closed session.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Signed. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Consideration.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
To get away, so 5-minute break while we get the button sorted. We're taking a 5-minute break, so can we get the button sorted out? And then, are you okay then just to go, keep going on? Yeah.
Okay, I think
Get us-
we're now in public session. Yes, so just to keep members right, we're on agenda item 8, which is provision for proxy voting for parental leave in plenary, and this is our committee consideration. So the committee wrote to the parties and the independent members seeking views on its intended approach to a new standing order and guidance on proxy voting for parental leave in plenary. Responses have been received from Jerry Carroll, MLA, People Before Profit, at page 125 of the meeting pack, and Paula Bradshaw, MLA Alliance Party, at page 131 of the pack. Jerry Carroll's response, which is at page 125, calls for flexibility and supports some emergency provisions being in place to allow as late a notification to the Speaker as possible. Members may wish to keep this in mind when finalising the approach to deadline for notification to the Speaker. Paula Bradshaw's response, which is at page 131 of the pack, is in connection with parental leave and attendance at committee meetings and concerns the possible capture of parental leave and attendance data and statistics. Can I seek agreement from members to respond to Jerry Carroll MLA indicating that the committee has considered his input in coming to its decision on a deadline, and that we respond to Paula Bradshaw indicating that the committee report will reflect that there may be merit in exploring a potential administrative solution to record in attendance data or explain in some way parental leave in a committee for a member, and that it will ask the committee and members' support office to consider this, and that the committee report will also outline the committee's intention to consider proxy voting in committees and in plenary for other circumstances in the future.
Content, Chair.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. The committee will now consider the definition of foster carers. Members had agreed a preliminary approach to what it meant by foster caring as set out at paragraph 9 of the clerk's memo, which is page 110 of your pack. The committee requested research on how people are registered as foster carers to assist its consideration. The research paper is at pages 137 to 148 of the pack, and some key points that relate directly to the work of the committee on proxy voting are that the 5 health and social care trusts provide fostering services, as do the following independent fostering agencies: Bernardo's, Action for Children, Kindercare, Fostering Northern Ireland, Foster Care Associates Northern Ireland. That each has a broadly similar application or approval and registration process in place for the registration of foster parents and others with whom a child is placed, which is required by regulations. Members can be confident that they can use the term registered in their future in their definition, that the current regulation uses the term foster parent rather than foster care. So can I seek agreement from the members to amend the term foster carers to foster parents? Yep. And can I also get agreement from members that the committee report will reflect how foster parents are approved and registered by one of the 5 health and social care trusts or independent agencies?
Yeah.
Thank you. The committee discussed in closed session its approach to the period that proxy voting arrangements would be in place for foster carers, and we also discussed some other issues as well, and we haven't come to a definitive consensus on that, and we will be bringing that back to our meeting on the 26th of June. So the committee will now move on to finalise its approach to the practical and administrative issues. These matters will form the basis of the committee report that will accompany the draft standing order when it is debated in plenary. So just to advise members that they undertook an initial and detailed informal consideration of these matters at our meeting on the 15th of May. As per the draft standing order, it will be for the Speaker to issue guidance on how the scheme will work. However, it is anticipated that the committee's consideration of these matters will be very helpful to the Speaker. So, members, we will now go through each issue, seeking the formal agreement of the committee to the approach. While the committee agreed on the vast majority of issues, there were some areas where further clarification was sought, or the Speaker has suggested a difference in approach. And you will draw attention to these. I'll draw your attention to them as we move through. So can I refer members to Table 1 at pages 114 to 112 of the meeting pack, and we'll start to rattle through these. So if we can begin with the issues relating to notification. So the first issue is that the member wishing to vote by proxy for parental leave in plenary should notify the Speaker. There was no disagreement when the committee first considered this in May, and this approach also aligns with the suggestions in the letter from the Speaker. Are members content with this approach? Yep. The next issue is that the notification should be made by email from the account of the member wishing to vote by proxy to a specified email account that is delivered to the Speaker's office and the business office. And members will be aware that when we first considered this in May, there was clear agreement that it should be one email going to both offices. The Speaker's letter suggests slightly different wording, stating that the notification is by an email to the business office, which operates under the Speaker's authority. Are members content to amend the approach to reflect the suggested wording from the Speaker that an email to the business office will be sufficient?
Yeah.
Content, thank you. Next, that the notification may be by email or by use of a form devised by the business office that captures the relevant information. This aligns with the suggestions in the Speaker's letter. Are members content with this approach? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So that the notification should include the name of the member wishing to vote by proxy, the name of the member who has agreed to act as their proxy, therefore verifying that they have agreed to act as the proxy, and the period when the proxy will be operational, so the start and end date. There is a suggestion in the letter from the Speaker that the named member should consent to this arrangement. So this issue was discussed earlier in the meeting, and recollection, the outcome of that was that members will have already sought agreement from the person they've asked a proxy before they actually include their name in the email. So can I ask the members if they are content with the original proposed wording, or would they prefer an amendment to reflect the suggestion of the Speaker? If we were to amend it, the second bullet point there would read the name of the member who has agreed to act as their proxy, who should be copied into the notification, therefore verifying that they have agreed to act as the proxy. So are you happy that their name is just that they're copied into the notification?
I think that's reasonable, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, members. Okay, the next issue is that the proxy voting arrangements are published in the plenary minutes of proceedings and the official record. So just to advise members that this principle is in the draft standing order. Publishing the proxy voting arrangements allows for openness and transparency for all other members as well as the public and how votes are being exercised. Members may wish to note that the Speaker has suggested a minor amendment to clarify that the proxy voting arrangements are published whether or not exercised. Are members content that the committee approach should reflect the suggestion by the Speaker?
Sorry, Chair, could you just go through that bit again?
Yep. Okay, so what we're being asked to consider is that the proxy voting arrangements are published in the plenary minutes of proceedings and the official record. So the principle is in the draft standing order. So publishing the proxy voting arrangements allows for openness and transparency for all other members as well as the public and how votes are being exercised. So that's just saying whether you voted in person or whether your vote was registered as a proxy vote. So we may wish to note that the Speaker has suggested a minor change to clarify that the proxy voting arrangements are published whether they're exercised or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
There's no GDPR issues, is there? I imagine there's not, like, because of the nature of what we do.
It would be page 115 of the committee pack.
115 members,
If you look at page 115 of the committee pack, at the top of that table there's a text box with red, which explains what the actual amendment that they might look like. And it would read that the proxy voting arrangements are published in the plenary minutes of proceedings and the official report, whether or not exercised. The
Sorry,
words
Chair.
whether or not exercised would just be added to the end of that, the wording.
Okay.
sorry, Chair, how would that work? Obviously, I can see how it works in a recorded vote, that the vote is, the proxy records their own vote and the other person's vote, and that's recorded as a proxy vote within the official result. How does it work in the minutes?
I could ask for clarification on that for you, bring an example back at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Just if the proxy isn't being used, I'm not sure how it's recorded.
Would it be more helpful if we got a bit of clarity in that, just an example of how that might look in a minute?
Well, if any of the clerks have any guidance, or if anybody else can explain it,
I don't know them how to do the minutes of proceedings of plenary, so I'll just get one of the clerks there to
Yeah.
get an example.
I think just to make sure we're really, crossing the T's here, dotting the I's, it's maybe better, Danny, if we get an example of how that might be minuted, how that might look, just so we know how that will appear.
Yeah, just how that would appear. Yeah.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just pause that one. Okay, so the next one is the deadline for notification to the Speaker. The committee deferred this issue to seek clarification around the 9:30 a.m. deadline in Temporary Standing Order 112. The Speaker has recommended a deadline of 4 p.m. on the working day prior to the sitting at which the arrangement is due to begin, and that any changes to proxy voting arrangements following the deadline should only take effect from the next sitting day. This issue was discussed earlier in the meeting, and it's also included in the correspondence from Jerry Carroll, which is on page 125. So are members content with the deadline as suggested by the Speaker? Or if not, is there an alternative deadline that the committee wants to consider? So are we content to go as the Speaker's recommendation, which is 4 p.m. on the day before as the deadline?
Yes, I'm content with that. I think too that you're probably going to need a certain amount of administrative procedure to put that in place, and that would be really exceptional circumstances, say, that would allow anything else to sort of evolve there, such as somebody having an accident in the morning or the likes of, so that as a general rule, I think that's okay.
Danny, I know you teased this out with Paul and Jonathan just in around, and Paul was sort of clear in terms of that pressurised hour between 9:30 and 10:30 between the start of plenary. So have you any thoughts on just, because go ahead.
Sorry, Jerry, that was very useful earlier, just being able to discuss that with Paul. And yeah, I appreciate it's a highly pressurised hour just before the start of plenary. Although I do get Jerry Carroll's issue about flexibility in very exceptional circumstances. Now, again, for parental leave, those exceptional circumstances would be very, very rare circumstances. And I think the outcome of that discussion was that if the 4 p.m. deadline is breached, then for whatever reason, that MLA who is getting unexpected parental leave would lose voting in a whole day. So I assume then, the next day it would kick in the next day after that. Is that correct? Is that my understanding? Is that
Understand
how
too,
we
yeah.
resolve?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, yeah.
So there's a whole day's worth of that MLA's vote will be lost to the Assembly then. I get that there would be very, very rare circumstances, but there is, I suppose there has to be a reflection. If we are doing a proxy, there has to be a cut-off date as well, or there has to be a cut-off time as well, and it has to work with the business office. So I would prefer flexibility, but if flexibility isn't possible, I understand the 4 p.m. deadline. So thank you.
I would prefer flexibility as well, and I think it will be in very rare circumstances. So do we maybe look for a different form of words that would reflect, the preferred option is that it's 4 p.m. But should, something arise, a medical emergency or something unforeseen, that there is that inbuilt flexibility. Would members prefer if we come back with a different form of words around that one, just to reflect the need for maybe a wee bit of flexibility? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, noted. Thank you. So we're going to move on then to issues dealing with definition and duration. So this will start at page 116 of your pack. So the proxy voting arrangements would be for a maximum duration of 9 months commencing on the start date of the notification to the Speaker. So members will be aware that we discussed this at some length at the meeting in May when consideration was given to duration in other legislators, as well as the statutory provision for maternity leave for employees. Members decided on a maximum of 9 months for the duration of parental leave. Members also decided not to recommend that the maximum duration be divided into a period before and a period after parental leave. The Speaker has made no comment on the duration of 9 months. He has simply suggested that the arrangements be for a specific period of time or until further notice, at least until the end of the maximum period. And this does not contradict the approach of the committee. In discussions earlier in the meeting, the committee agreed that the duration of we didn't agree on the duration of fostering. That's something that we're going to bring back at our meeting on the 26th. So in terms of the, I was going to maybe split that up and say, can we agree that the period, the 9 months, but because the issue around fostering is still unresolved, it's probably best just to leave that until we have, and we can do that all at once. Would that be fair enough? So once we come back on the 26th, then we have a clearer picture in terms of our definition of fostering and the leave. We'll get back to this one, and we'll either agree or not that set period of 9 months or whatever it may be. Are members happy enough with that? Yeah. Okay, the next issue is that the proxy voting arrangements would be in one continuous block and include periods of recess and dissolution. The members made no comment on this aspect. Are the members content with this approach? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next, the Speaker, Principal Deputy Speaker and Deputy Speakers should not act as a proxy for other members. When we discussed this in May, we agreed that as Principal Deputy Speaker, Deputy Speakers may be chairing any item of business and therefore unable to vote. They should not be asked to act as proxy for a member. This aligns with the suggestion in the Speaker's letter. Are members content that we proceed with this approach?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, next issue, that tellers are strongly discouraged from acting as a proxy for other members. The Speaker takes a slightly different approach, suggesting that members who are due to vote on behalf of others should not act as tellers. This presents difficulties. If tellers were allowed to act as proxies, and as previously discussed, the members also recognise that not allowing tellers to act as proxies may create a barrier to the smaller parties and the independent members in using the proxy voting provision. So it was therefore agreed that tellers would not be prevented from acting as a proxy, but that it should be strongly discouraged. Danny?
Yeah, Chair, just between the difference between this and the previous one, whereas the Speaker, Principal Deputy Speaker and Deputy Speakers should not act as a proxy, should that not be changed to may not then? We are adding a degree of flexibility with the inclusion of the word should.
I'm trying to remember the legal advice that was...
The legal advice wasn't, hang on 2 seconds to get that up.
Whereas with tellers, they're being strongly discouraged, and obviously we should not, but it's recognised that with the smaller parties, there should be a degree of flexibility.
It's it's not in the draft standing order.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the Speaker has recommended it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen in Standing Order 112, and that's simply because it can be confusing if they're voting. So it's that they should not.
Mm-hmm. So in the Speaker's guidance, it does say should not.
Okay.
So I think obviously I take the point. I can see it from both sides. You know, it's not ideal for tellers to be proxying because they're supposed to stay until the end of the vote. If they leave the lobby to then go and carry out their proxy duties, then the lobby can't be closed off, and there's issues there as well. So, but then again, I can see if your numbers are slightly less, and you don't have that many people to choose from, then obviously you might need to rely on those people. So listen, I'm in your hands. Do we go by the Speaker's advice? So just the Speaker's advice. So I'll just reiterate that again for members. So the Speaker takes a different approach to what we sort of had been discussing. So that members who are due to vote on behalf of others should not act as tellers. So therefore agree that tellers would not be prevented from acting as and should be strongly discouraged. So are we content? Do we want to continue to adopt the approach as discussed at our meeting in May, or would we prefer to use the approach suggested by the Speaker?
Can I just go back, Chair? Just, is there anything, as you've described it there, the teller's responsibilities, is there anything that actually prevents a teller from voting in the other lobby then?
No. There's nothing that prevents it.
There's nothing to prevent them. I think where the Speaker's coming from is that when, as a lobby clerk, your teller is meant to be behind you and observing every single thing that the lobby clerk is putting through the system, and then is to sign off on the record. So if that teller leaves your lobby, they're not watching what the clerk is doing, and they can leave it to go and vote in another lobby, but then they would have to come back to sign off when we print the record. So you're waiting for them then. You can't close the lobbies until you get permission from both tellers. So if a teller has gone to do a proxy vote in the opposite lobby, then you couldn't close the lobby and you can't sign off on it. You're waiting for that person to come back. But it's ideally, the teller is meant to be watching the clerk in the lobby, so that they can authorise the record at the end. If they're not in that lobby, they won't know whether the clerk put something else through. If a member came through late to put a vote through, they wouldn't know that because they wouldn't be there. The other teller would have to tell them. And that's one of the reasons why the teller's votes are actually put through at the table, so they don't have to go through any lobbies when they're there. You know, so as a teller, if you're going to be a teller in the yes lobby but you're voting no, your vote goes through at the table, so you don't have to go over to that lobby to do it. So it's practical reason for, it's really the audit purpose that the tellers are watching the clerk and are able to sign the record at the end to say yes, they're content, that was the correct.
The oversight of the vote, and as Paul has said, making sure that the vote is done correctly, and therefore the vote is never open to challenge, that is actually the duty of the teller. That's why they're there. So, yeah, you know, for them to then to have to leave their post to go and cast somebody else's vote elsewhere. But as members, some of the members last time said some of the parties with maybe fewer members would find it difficult if they had somebody, a member who was on table as a speaker or deputy speaker or principal deputy speaker, and then also a teller and a proxy. It can and maybe one or two members off. So it can be difficult. So that's why members have taken this strongly disencouraged approach. But sorry, Trevor wanted to come in.
Trevor, go ahead.
No, I'm actually okay. Both Stella and Christine have raised what I wanted to say. I mean, in terms of what the norm is, I can see it difficultly, but for the smaller parties, where they haven't that luxury of having additional members. But broadly speaking, I wouldn't support a teller doing it either.
So I suppose the question for us is whether we go with the Speaker, which is saying members who are due to vote on behalf of others should not act as tellers, or whether we go with the committee's approach, was that it's strongly discouraged, but it's not prevented. Is this something we wish to defer to the 26th and have a bit more?
If it helps, Chair, I propose we go for strongly discouraged.
Right.
And we'll not be any further explicit than that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Agree for strongly discouraged.
So strongly, yeah, strongly discouraged. So that's in keeping with the committee's deliberations so far. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, members. Next issue is that that there's no limit on the number of members that a proxy can act for, but as we know, we can't agree that today. That's deferred until the 26th. So next is that in notifying the Speaker that the member wished a named member to exercise their vote by proxy, the member may also confirm to the Speaker that their proxy is authorised, if they are unable to act, to nominate another member to carry out the proxy function. So in our initial consideration of the issue, the committee noted that this was taken directly from the guidance in Standing Order 112 and was developed as part of the COVID pandemic response, based on a member who'd carried a large number of votes having to self-isolate with little or no notice and with immediate effect. The Speaker has suggested that the named member should not be then able to delegate this responsibility to another member. And people will recall we discussed this issue with Paul earlier in the meeting. So the committee has an option. Either we retain the approach that notifying the Speaker that the member wished a named member to exercise their vote by proxy, and that member may also confirm to the Speaker that their proxy is authorised, if they are unable to act, to nominate another member to carry out the proxy function. Or do we adopt the approach suggested by the Speaker that the named member should not then be able to delegate this responsibility to another member? So that if I nominate a member to proxy me, and then that member subsequently can't do it, the responsibility comes back to me as the original person looking for the proxy. I have to go and find somebody else. So
Agreed.
I think that was probably in keeping with the advice that we received earlier.
I'd agree with that.
Alicia's in agreement. Danny, you're in agreement with that?
Yep, great.
Yeah. So we're deferring to the Speaker's suggested approach.
Sorry, Chair. Earlier on, we were discussing this, and it did become the responsibility of the person who is unable to do the proxy then to contact the person they're proxying for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What if that contact doesn't happen?
We're kind of in uncharted territory there. I suppose, and again, we probably can't be too. We can't be too prescriptive. I suppose you could, what lengths do we want the standing order to be if we start putting in for every eventuality? But I suppose, if we're dealing with, if we remind ourselves we're dealing with parental leave here, which is scheduled and not necessarily something that is, a surprise to anybody or comes out of the blue, there should be adequate time, I think, given the issue that we're talking about, to defer that to somebody else.
Yeah.
You would think.
I can certainly add in a line along the effect of that if the proxy is unable to exercise their vote, that they should make as much effort as possible to contact something, along those lines, that they should make.
Contact in there,
Yeah.
unless it's
Yeah.
exceptional. But
we can
we can
do that.
We
We can take make a line to that effect into the guidance for you as well, into the committee report.
Yeah, I think that'd
Alongside
be
that.
useful. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, so the next issue, it's one that was not considered by the committee on the 15th of May, but it concerns how a member may change their proxy. Members may need to change their proxy for a number of reasons, including that the proxy no longer wishes to act as proxy or is unable to do so. The proxy may not wish to cast a vote as directed by the member, or the proxy may have left their party or resigned as a member. So the clerk's memo, hopefully you have it in front of you there, you'll see a form of words which says, the member registered as voting by proxy, wishing to change their proxy, can do so by notification to the Speaker, naming the new proxy member and the period that the member holds their proxy in the same timescales as we will agree at our next meeting. So the question for us is, are we content to agree that approach? So are members happy that it's slightly different to what Danny was talking about. This is not something that happens, unscheduled. This is, a person saying, I want to change my proxy vote. That member has left, that member has resigned, that member is, I don't no longer trust them to carry my proxy. I'm nominating another person. So that's just setting those set of circumstances out. Are members happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next three issues will be taken together. These issues were discussed in May, and there was at the time general agreement on the approach. The letter from the Speaker, it has to be noted, makes no comment on them. So the three issues are that the member registered as voting by proxy wishing to cast a vote in person or end their period of proxy voting early can do so by means of further notification to the Speaker in the same timescales as agreed above. And the further notification should provide details of the revised dates or periods as appropriate. And that the member registered as voting by proxy must agree with the member nominated as their proxy when the proxy vote will be cast and how it will be exercised. It is the responsibility of their member to ensure that this agreement has been secured and that the proxy voting scheme is not compulsory. Are members content with this approach in relation to those three issues? Yeah, thank you. I'm not hearing any dissenting voices. Thank you. So we are now on the final straight and nearly finished the committee consideration, you'd be glad to know, of our preferred approach. The committee has agreed that further commentary should be provided on the exercise of the proxy vote. This has been provided at page 120 of the meeting pack. The letter from the Speaker makes no comment on these issues. So the issues to be considered are: the proxy will cast the member's vote by communicating the proxy's name to the lobby clerks and tellers in the relevant lobby, and the member's vote shall be included in the numbers counted as cast in that lobby. Are members content with that approach? Yeah. Tellers will need to be made aware of the proxy voting arrangements. Yeah, members content? A member authorised as a proxy will be expected to act in strict accordance with the instruction given by the member. Are we content? Yeah. A member authorised as a proxy may cast their own vote in one lobby and the proxy vote in the other, and may cast a proxy vote without casting their own vote at all. Content? A proxy may cast a vote on behalf of a member wishing to abstain by casting their vote in both lobbies. Content? Following the deadline of notification to the Speaker, any member registered as voting by proxy which apply to that sitting may not vote in person at that sitting. Content? So if you've applied, to your vote to be proxied, you can't then turn up and vote in person as well. Okay. So, members, that concludes the consideration of the approach to the practical and administrative arrangements associated with proxy voting for parental leave. Clerks will now begin to draft the committee report based on our consideration.
We'll bring back some issues next week.
Yeah, perfect. So, yes, at our next meeting on the 26th of June, the committee will be asked to finalise its consideration of the draft standing order. So can I ask members to ensure that they discuss the draft standing order with their parties, particularly those issues that are outstanding, and we'll get notification out between now and then to members to remind them in advance of the meeting on the 26th. So can I ask members to note the proposed timescale for bringing the draft standing order and committee report to the Assembly for approval? That timescale is in paragraph 19 at page 113 of the meeting pack. Okay, so is that noted? Agenda item 9 is the forward work programme, which is on pages 228 and 229 of the meeting pack. It's been updated. The provisional dates for committee meetings from September until Christmas recess are listed at the bottom of the forward work programme. The first meeting after summer recess is currently scheduled for Wednesday, the 11th of September. Michael Kearns, who people will remember is the acting head of communications, has suggested that it would be more beneficial to provide a briefing and tour of the Assembly chamber to outline the technical possibilities in relation to electronic voting in September rather than the last meeting in June. So his email to the committee can be found at page 230 of your meeting pack. The briefing and the research paper on the systems of electronic voting in other legislators has therefore been rescheduled to the 25th of September 2024. The review of the committee's strategic priorities is also scheduled for that date. The committee is currently due to consider the legal advice requested on the potential provision for substitute members and or proxy voting for the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee in a potential new standing order to make provision for that committee at the meeting on the 26th of June. So just to advise members that Assembly Legal Services has indicated that it may be possible to provide the legal advice on the provision of substitute members for the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee, but not for proxy voting, by Tuesday the 18th of June, if the committee was minded to try and bring forward a standing order to the Assembly before summer recess. They could also provide a draft standing order to illustrate how that would look. So just to advise members, I'm not available on the 18th of June, and obviously Kelly, the chair, isn't available on the 18th of June. So just to bear that in mind. So I think maybe the time scales for that just maybe a bit tight. If the committee was minded to try and bring forward such a standing order before summer recess, an additional meeting would have to be held next week. And at that meeting, the committee would need to consider the legal advice, agree a draft standing order, and agree a motion to go to the Business Committee by the 25th of June to enable it to schedule a debate for the last plenary sitting before summer recess, which are scheduled for week commencing 1st of July. So as I said, neither myself or the chairperson are available for an additional meeting next week, so it may be very difficult to get quorum outside of normal committee meeting schedule. The committee also agreed to write to the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee requesting its views on how it sees substitute members and proxy voting operating in practice in the committee, and in particular proposals or features it would like this committee to consider. The response is due by the 21st of June, so we mightn't even necessarily have that committee's response to those proposals by next week. So what I'm going to suggest to the meeting is that we consider the issues at the meeting on the 26th of June and bring forward any standing order in September, rather than trying to hold an additional meeting given the circumstances that I've just outlined. Would members be in agreement with that, or do we want to try and cobble something together for next week?
I'm content, Chair.
Okay. I'm not seeing anybody disagreeing with that, so we'll bring forward.
Sorry,
Yes?
Chair.
Go ahead, Danny.
I understand the pressures, and certainly I understand that there would have to be an extra meeting. I'm just curious just about the potential outcome of that over the summer for the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee. If they're unable to substitute people in to that committee, if people are away, what effect could that have on the committee?
Yeah, I suppose I take your point, but bear in mind this was always the timeline that the Democratic Scrutiny Committee were aware of. Legal have just been able to do things a little bit faster, probably, which is always good, but it doesn't give us, I think, enough time to fully scrutinise any potential, and we will be getting legal advice on it as well. And bear in mind, we haven't had any feedback from the committee either on this, so we'd be rushing something through that we haven't really consulted that committee on whether it's right for them and it's exactly what they want.
Okay.
And they've been aware that that was the original timeline as indicated to them at the start. So, anything other than that is a bonus. But unfortunately, we need to make sure that it's right for them.
Okay, no problem, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danny. So, are members content to agree the forward work programme as outlined? Thank you. Agenda item 10 is correspondence. So can I refer members to pages 232 and 234 of the meeting pack. So as I said, the Acting Head of Communications, Michael Kearns, has written to all committee clerks to draw members' attention to the importance of not sharing the personalised links included in Zoom meeting invitations. He's also advised that laptops and Surface Pros being used in committee rooms should be muted during meetings to reduce the risk of audio feedback. Michael had covered these issues with us when he briefed the Committee on the Broadcasting and Remote Participation Systems at our last meeting. So his correspondence is at page 233. Can I ask members to note that correspondence on Zoom links and devices in committee meetings unless any further information on that is required? Thank you. So correspondence has been received from the Assembly Head of Information Technology, Mary Ellen Nutt, advising that the deadline for completion of the Constituency Office survey to establish individual user accounts to support the provision of new devices and enhance cyber security has been extended to Friday the 14th of June 2024. Mary Ellen has asked that members ensure that they and their relevant staff complete the survey, as provisions of devices may be delayed if the necessary information is not received on time, and that correspondence is at page 234 of your pack. So can I ask members to note that, unless there's any questions around the new devices, which I won't be able to answer at this time, but if members are happy enough, we'll move on to agenda item 11, which is chairperson's business, and you'll be happy to know there is no items of chairperson's business to cover. So agenda item 12 is any other business. No, thank you. Agenda item 13, date and time of next meeting. So our next meeting will be Wednesday the 26th of June 2024, 10 a.m, room 21, Parliament Buildings, and I advise that the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well.